A bird in the hand is worth more than a flock in the sky. The soft hum of a laptop fan was the only heartbeat in John's darkened bedroom at 3 in the morning. He sat hunched over a glowing screen, but he wasn't working on the project due in 5 hours. Instead, his eyes were glazed over, fixed on a point 3 inches behind the monitor. In his mind, he wasn't a freelance coder struggling to pay rent in a cramped city apartment. He was the CEO of a revolutionary tech empire, walking onto a stage bathed in blue spotlights. He could almost hear the thunderous applause of 10,000 people as he unveiled a product that would change the world. He felt the weight of a tailor-made suit against his skin and the cool confidence of a man who had finally arrived. This was John's sanctuary, a meticulously built kingdom of the mind where failure was physically impossible. But while he was receiving a standing ovation in his head, his cold cup of coffee was forming a thin film of oil. The real world was a messy place of deadlines, taxes, and the crushing fear of being average. Fantasy, however, was a drug that required no dealer and offered an instant, shimmering high. John didn't realize that his brain was being hijacked by its own reward system. Every time he imagined the victory, his brain flooded with dopamine as if the victory had actually happened. He was stealing the pleasure of his future to avoid the discomfort of his present. This is the hidden trap of the creative mind, where the map becomes more beautiful than the territory. As the weeks turned into months, John's apartment began to resemble a graveyard of good intentions. Gym clothes lay in a pile by the door, representing the version of himself that was supposed to be an athlete. Unopened books on philosophies sat on the shelf, tokens of the intellectual he was in his daydreams. He was living 1,000 lives in the theater of his skull, while his physical life remained a draft. The danger of a vivid imagination is that it can become a comfortable substitute for a vivid life. John started to find real conversations exhausting because they lacked the scripted perfection of his thoughts. He would look at his friends and feel a strange sense of superiority, imagining they didn't see the titan he truly was. But the titan couldn't pay his electricity bill, and the hero of the story was currently late on his rent. The breaking point came when he looked in the bathroom mirror and saw a stranger with sunken eyes. The gap between the man in the suit and the man in the mirror had become a painful, yawning chasm. He realized he was a ghost haunting his own life, a spectator to a movie that would never be filmed. Desperate for a way back to the surface, he began to study the mechanics of his own escapism. He discovered the ancient concept of Mushin, the mind that is like a mirror, reflecting only what is before it. A mirror doesn't dream of a better mountain. It simply reflects the mountain that stands there. John began to practice the art of returning, a gentle tugging of the soul back to the physical world. He started with the sensation of cold water on his face, forcing his mind to stay in the splash. He practiced Zanshin, the lingering awareness that remains after a simple task is completed. When he washed a dish, he stayed with the soap and the warmth of the water until the last droplet fell. He learned that the present moment is the only place where power actually resides. Fantasy is a place of infinite potential, but zero kinetic energy. Reality is limited, heavy, and often boring. But it is the only place where a hammer can hit a nail. John began to embrace the concept of Ichigo Ichi, treating every mundane encounter as a once-in-a-lifetime event. He realized that this specific Tuesday morning, with its gray sky and tepid air, would never happen again. To dream through, it was to throw a diamond into the ocean. The first time he sat down to code without escaping into a daydream, he felt an intense, burning anxiety. The work was hard, his back ached, and he felt frustratingly ordinary. But as he typed the first line of code, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. He felt the resistance of the world, the friction that proves you are actually moving. He wasn't a CEO yet, but he was a man doing a job, and that had a weight that fantasy lacked. He began to see his daydreams, not as goals, but as shadows that stole the light from his work. Every time his mind started to build a stage for a future speech, he snapped back to the keyboard. He learned to find beauty in the imperfections of his small, messy life. The peeling paint on his wall was better than a palace in the clouds because he could touch it. His friends were better than his imaginary fans because they could actually look him in the eye. The dopamine hit of a completed task began to replace the empty sugar rush of a daydream. He was rebuilding his neurochemistry, 1 minute of focused attention at a time. He stopped being a ghost and started being a resident of the physical world. His body began to feel stronger because he was finally inhabiting it again. The silence in his room was no longer a canvas for fantasy, but a space for deep work. John realized that the most dangerous lie we tell ourselves is that we have time to waste in the clouds. The clock on his wall wasn't just measuring hours, it was measuring the erosion of his potential. He started to take pride in the small, ugly victories of a Monday morning. He finished a project, then another, and then a third, without ever imagining the award ceremony. The satisfaction was quieter than his fantasies, but it stayed with him when he went to sleep. He was no longer starving for a glory that didn't exist. He was nourished by the reality he was building with his own two hands. The comfort of the cage was gone, replaced by the bracing wind of the open road. John looked at the screen and saw a completed project, a tangible piece of the world he had created. It wasn't a tech empire, but it was a beginning, and it was real. He stepped out of his apartment and felt the sun on his skin, a sensation no imagination could replicate. The world was loud, chaotic, and unpredictable, and he loved it for that. He was no longer waiting for his life to start. He was finally living it. We often treat our imagination as a playground, forgetting that it can easily become a tomb. The mind is a beautiful place to visit, but it is a terrible place to reside. If you find yourself building kingdoms while your room grows dusty, you are not alone. The antidote is not to stop dreaming, but to start doing. It is the choice to be small and real rather than large and imaginary. It is the courage to face the boredom of the process without looking for an exit. True creativity is not found in the vision, but in the execution. The hero of your story is not the person you imagine in the future. The hero is the person who is brave enough to be here right now in the mess. Every time you pull your focus back to the task at hand, you are winning a war. You are reclaiming your life from the shadows and the ghosts of what might be. The world doesn't need more dreamers who stay in bed. The world needs builders who are willing to get their hands dirty in the present. Take a deep breath and feel the air entering your lungs. Listen to the sounds of the room you are currently sitting in. Notice the weight of your body and the texture of the clothes you are wearing. This is where your life is happening. Don't miss it for a dream that will never have a heartbeat. The portal to your true potential is found in the ordinary moments you usually ignore. Walk through that door and see what is waiting for you on the other side. Reality is the greatest adventure you will ever be invited to join. Stop watching the movie and start writing the script with your actions. The light of the present is the only thing that can truly set you free. The journey back to the world is the most important one you will ever take. If you want to continue exploring the deep corridors of your mind and reclaiming your focus, subscribe to Deep Mind Portal.